Heather, you are a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author. How did all of that get started?
Oh, God. Long story. When I was in school, I was actually a musical theater major and got out of school and did some dinner theater. Did not pay extremely well at the time, and by the time I had 3 kids, I actually could not afford to go to work anymore. And that's when I started writing. And I didn't know a thing about it. I bought something called Writer's Digest, Writer's Market, which I still recommend to everybody because there's just so much information in it for no matter what you're writing. And I started sending things off, and it was really kind of sad because I thought surely if I ever sold a book, they would pay me immediately and it would be out in a couple months. So I had a lot to learn about publishing. I did not start out with books, though. I had a couple of short horror stories sold, and then I sold my first book finally to Dell.
Was that a hard struggle for you to get published?
I think it was a lot for me because I really didn't know anyone who was writing at all. So I think it's super now that there are so many really wonderful groups out. I mean, a group can't teach you how to write. Or I shouldn't say to write. No one can teach you to be a storyteller.
Right.
But a group can help you with so many things that a lot of beginning writers don't understand. And it's not even that there aren't a million ways to do things, but groups help you understand the concept of genre. They know the different publishing houses, where you should be sending what you're writing. But even things like I was numbering pages wrong. My chapters went 1 to 20, 1 to 20, 1 to 21. Just so many basic things that you can learn when you're in a group. There's so much encouragement. You understand a lot more how publishing works. They're just great things to be had out there.
Well, now you sold your first novel, and now you have written over 100.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a lot of kids. That kept me busy.
How do you keep going? Where do you find your stories?
I'm very, very lucky because I absolutely love what I do. And the house that I'm with now, under one of their imprints, I'm Shannon Drake, and I do a historical every year. I do a straight suspense, I do a ghost story, I do a vampire, and this year I have, next month, something coming out called The Last Noel, which is it's not exactly a heartwarming Christmas story, but in a way it is. It's about a dysfunctional family in Massachusetts in the middle of a terrible snowbound blizzard where they get dropped in, a pair of killers hop in for Christmas dinner with them. So they have to learn how to get along to hopefully survive for the next Christmas.
And that will be out, of course, when? In December?
Actually, I think the on-sale date is October 27th, so it'll be out there.
It's already out there. So you write in every category, then?
I think I'm very lucky. So far, anything that really interests me that I'm in love with, I kind of get to do. And I'm assuming that in the future there will be more things.
And you write very fast.
I do. I think actually the strangest thing about writing to me is the hardest thing is the thinking part. And of course you can kind of plot in your mind almost all the time. And therefore, I think a lot of writers do this. Half your life you're plotting.
So you walk around with all these stories going on in your head.
I think you see things. And I think this probably works for everyone, whether you write 1 book a year, 2 books a year, 1 book every 10 years. I think that authors have a habit of, I'll never forget, I am from Miami, and Miami is one of those places where pretty much so every day something happens that could be put in a book. But I'll never forget when we had the Miami Herald come out with the headline that said, "Electric chair deemed dangerous." I think, if you live in a city where they finally come to that conclusion, well, had to do with the death penalty in the state. And there's just so much that always goes on that all you have to do is read the news. There's always something to go with.
And you get a lot of your ideas from the news.
Definitely.
Yeah?
From anything that pops up. You can get them from people you meet. That's one thing. The kids are great because 5 kids with all their different interests. I've met people who do everything in the world. So anytime you meet someone, you've got something more.
Heather, do you have any weird quirks?
I probably have a lot of them. I'm not sure what they are myself, but I'm sure other people could tell you that indeed I have weird quirks. I have a skunk. That's a weird quirk, I guess.
That's a quirk.
Yeah, I have a little pet albino skunk, but Again, I'm sure I do. I don't know what they are.
Now, what are you working on next?
Right now I'm working on a series that will come out next October, November, and December. And the first one is Deadly Night. The second one is Deadly Harvest. And they are ghost/suspense books that will coincide with Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
All right.
So.
And if you've ever had have you ever had writer's block?
I have not, and that's mainly because if you have 5 children, I cannot afford to have writer's block. So they're very inspiring.
Ah, okay. Tell us, how does it feel to be so famous?
Well, I don't think it's a strange thing. I think it's very difficult for writers to be so famous. I think that J.K. Rowling, of course, is very, very famous,
Right.
and Stephen King is certainly out there. But I think a lot of times when you think of the largest names or the most popular names in publishing, people still may not recognize that person. So it's a very nice way to be somewhat known in certain circles, and I very much so am grateful for and enjoy the fact that I have gotten to survive on what I do. You know, anytime you get to do what you love for a living and still make it, you know,
Yes.
that's a blessing.
Yes, that is a blessing. And what do you say to writers to help encourage them, because you know that this is a tough business? What do you say to them?
I think that the most important thing, there are many, many talented people out there. The most important thing you're going to have is tenacity. Secondly, you're never going to please everyone, so what you need to do is make sure you please an editor somewhere who can actually buy your book. The most important thing is, you know, if you want to do it, you have to do it, and then you have to be smart about it and make sure if you want to write and be published and attempt to do it for a living and then do it for a living, you've got to be really good about continually working and continually getting your work out to someone who can indeed buy it. The groups are great, but you're always going to hear anytime you go to a workshop, everyone works a little bit differently. And there is no right or wrong. Everybody out there has had a different path to whatever they're doing. So you need to, you know, learn to go to all these things and listen, find out what works for you, and get your own formula going and never give up. You can write at any age, any stage of your life. You can have done anything for a living first. You can have gone to high school, married, and been a housewife. You can do absolutely anything at all and then find your career in writing. The one thing that I've discovered with people, and it doesn't matter what they came from, you know, again, you know, maybe high school, maybe a million different master's and doctorate degrees, the one thing that they all have in common is they absolutely loved to read. And that's the one thing I think that you still need to do, you know, if you really want to write. Yeah.
Very, okay. Well, Heather Graham, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Okay.